Thanks for joining us. We are the Center for Leadership and Community Engagement at Central Washington University. I'm Kylie Wright.
I'm Arely Reese.
Thank you, Arely, for coming back again for another episode. Word to the Wildcats is a 5-week series designed to provide space for notable CW alumni and CW educators to share stories of growth, resilience, and leadership with the current CW student body. Through Word to the Wildcats, we hope to share relatable life lessons that current CW students and community members can apply to their personal story. Today we have Bianca Finney, an assistant district attorney in the state of Kansas. To start us off, do you mind sharing a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm Bianca. I grew up in Sammamish, Washington. I am from Kansas City originally. I went to Central in 2009. I was a transfer student there. I went to high school, Eastlake High School in Sammamish, and now I'm back in Kansas again.
Awesome. So do you mind telling us a little bit about what you do now that you've left CWU and you've been on your own journey and doing what you love?
Yeah, sure. So what I do now is I'm an assistant district attorney, which is basically like a fancy name for a prosecutor. And so I just prosecute felony level crimes in my county here in Kansas. And I guess kind of go back to answer your question. From Central, I graduated in 2011, and after graduation, I moved down to California with my family and kind of spent a gap year there, and then ended up going to Kansas City, moving back home to Kansas City, and going to University of Missouri, Kansas City School of Law, where I graduated in 2017. So pretty recently, although it feels like it's been a long time. So ever since I graduated from law school, so my first job out of law school, I actually worked in a totally different capacity of work. I worked for an IT department for the county that I actually work for now. And I was a project manager there for about a year. And I ended up doing that because, after you graduate from law school, you're supposed to take the bar. And so I took the bar the first time around, and unfortunately I didn't pass. And so that job wasn't really a blessing for me to kind of get me back on my feet and kind of get me working. And so I worked there for a little while, and then the following year I took the bar again, and I passed the bar. And so after that, I ended up clerking for a judge for a year, which was an amazing experience for me. It taught me so much. And then after that, I ended up working where I am now. So that's kind of been my little progression professionally from Central to now.
That's awesome. So taking it back to before attending Central, do you mind sharing a memory from your childhood that motivated you to always keep moving forward?
Yeah, so for me, I don't think there's any one specific instance. I've always had a lot of moments in my life, but I was raised by a single parent, and she always worked really hard. And so I think just so many instances, but one I do remember is when I was about to start high school, and my mom was working in the mortgage industry at the time, and so she wanted to, pursue a job that was going to provide us a better life, better income for herself, so that she could take care of my sister and I. And so we ended up moving from Seattle down to San Diego, and so we were there for a couple of years, and just seeing my mom work really hard by herself, like 12-hour days, like it's just insane work ethic, and having that ability to work a lot and then come home and be, a parent to us and just keep giving, I guess, of herself to us as her kids. And she never, I never saw her quit. I never saw her just, I can't do this anymore, send you to relatives or whatever. So just seeing her go through those things has really been, an inspiration for me and motivation for me to kind of just keep pushing forward. And even if it's a really tough situation or a tough time of my life, to just keep persevering and never to give up.
Completely feel the same way. I've seen my mom leaps and bounds just to kind of like get through whatever she's like going through. So yeah, like I really appreciate you sharing that with us. So just really quick, so you mentioned you have a single mom. Are you a first generation student?
I am. My mom moved or immigrated here from Mexico. My entire mom's side of the family immigrated here from Mexico. And so I'm the first generation on my mom's side. My dad is American though.
Okay, so as like a first generation student, did you ever feel like out of place? How did you like navigate while you were here at CWU as a first generation student?
So for me, I think Central provided a really unique opportunity to me as a biracial student and also a first generation student. Just because where I grew up was not really diverse. And so I was always, one of a handful of minority students in my school. And so coming to Central, I had an opportunity, and especially in the dorms, to meet other students who, they were also first generation students, or they were immigrant students themselves. Being able to kind of have a window into my different cultures that I didn't necessarily have growing up. For me, my mom was always just my Mexican culture that I knew. That was it. Mm-hmm. And so coming to Central, I was so happy and fortunate that I got to meet people who were Hispanic and, spoke Spanish, and I could practice my Spanish with them and just kind of hear the stories about, their families and just different experiences that I had never even, I guess, thought of or imagined that people would go through. And so, just meeting people like on a personal level, but also being able to get involved in different organizations or different clubs on campus was really huge for me. First of all, to make friends, because I was the old lady transfer. I transferred as a junior, but I still lived in the dorms. And so I was like, well, let me try and make friends somehow. And so I did that to make friends, but also just, it was really a really cool experience because you get to learn so much about people and just different cultures, not necessarily your own. But I really enjoyed my experience there. One of the prime reasons was being exposed to something different than I had grown up with.
Mm-hmm. I feel like everyone has experienced that at college, that, you're used to whatever town you're from, the same people you grew up with, unless you moved around. Going to Central for me was a huge eye-opener for many reasons. So how did you end up choosing Central as the university you wanted to go to?
So for me, again, like I said, I was like the weird transfer student. So I initially had applied to different schools when I was still in high school, and I got rejected. And so I finished out I did the Running Start program, which I think is a statewide thing in Washington. Mm-hmm. I finished out my summer at a community college there. And then one of my best friends went to school there. And so I was like, well, I'm going to apply there because she goes to school there, and at least I'll have one friend when I go. And so I applied and I got in, and I am really glad that I did, just because a lot of the schools that I'd applied to were bigger schools. UW was like my dream school, and I was like, I really want to go there. I really want to be a Husky. Like, that's my dream. And, looking back and knowing myself, how I operate, how I learn, I'm really glad that I didn't end up going there. Not that there's anything wrong with UW. It's a great school. But I really liked the fact that I got to know everybody in my dorm. Like, I feel like I knew most of the people in my dorm, which I don't think a lot of people have that type of experience when they go to a huge school. And I got to know my teachers. I'm still friends with several of them, which is really weird to me. I don't know if a lot of people keep in touch with their professors from school, but that's just who I am, I guess. But it was such a cool experience, and I'm glad that I went there. It was a more personal experience for me, which is what I appreciated and how I learned best. So that's how I got there.
I can totally relate. I'm the same way. Like with this all online stuff, I'm just like, I need the in-person, I need the person.
Yes.
And like, I feel like Central just provides that really well. So it's really tough right now, but I feel like all of us are like getting through it and stuff like that. So yeah, just kind of going off of like what you said, like in terms of like you failed the bar your first time around, you didn't get to the school of your choice right off the bat. Like, how were you able to kind of like manage with that kind of, I don't know, like not failure, what is it called? Like when you
failure, you can call it.
I was like, I don't know if it's the right word, but we're gonna go with that.
I think you kind of have to call it what it is. It was a failure in a sense. You know, you didn't get what you set out to do or set out to get. And I think, for me, that's something that I've learned that's okay. It's okay to fail sometimes, because that's how you grow. That's how you learn. I don't think I would be in the position that I'm in now had I gotten everything that I initially went for, because for me, I feel like failure really kind of guides you to the things that are meant for you. And so, it was a failure in the time, but had I gotten into UW, I wouldn't have met all of my friends that I have still from Central. I wouldn't have met, professors who actually genuinely cared about me. Not to say that they would care about me at another school, but I think the relationships that developed at Central, I don't know if I'd necessarily have that closeness with people. People who'd help me get through really tough times. And, had I passed the bar the first time, I'd probably be working somewhere, 1 million hours a week, and maybe not necessarily liking my job, but it pays a lot, or, whatever reason. But I've always been able to see failure as just something that kind of guides you to where you're supposed to be. And I think that comes from experience, for one, but for me personally, it comes from just seeing my mom and the things that she's gone through herself, and failures that she's kind of gone through herself, and how she's grown through them, and she's persevered, and she's become very successful in her career and her personal life. And so, I've never really, I guess, let the fear of failure kind of hold me back from going after what I wanted. I still passed the bar, I still finished law school, I still went to university. So it all ended up working out the way that it should have. But, you just kind of have to roll with the punches, I guess.
Yeah, your determination it's motivating.
Oh,
it's great to hear.
I'm glad.
Yeah, and because a lot of people want to give up when things get tough or they fail. It's hard for people to get back on their feet. Yeah. But there's always hope. You just got to push through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
During your time at Central, what is one moment that has helped you grow into the person you are today?
That's a good question. I don't think there's necessarily one particular moment that shaped me or made me who I am. I think probably the thing that I valued, and it's kind of just going back to like the relationships that I built there, was, meeting people who didn't have to care about me, or who didn't necessarily have to take an interest in me, but that saw that I was there and that cared for me, I guess. Specifically, Mrs. Hall. I don't know if you guys know her, Dr. Hall's wife. I remember my first year at Central, when we get our swipe cards for the cafeteria and the C-store, I think it's called. And I ran out of money, and I was just like, I had no food. And so, my roommate was awesome, but Mrs. Hall, I remember her, she used to do, I think it was like soul food dinners. I can't remember what it was, but she would like cook all of these amazing things. And like some people would bring stuff from home as like a potluck type of thing. And so she made so much food this one time. I remember I had no money left, and she packed me like to go containers because I was like, I'm poor, like I have no food. So I had food for a week, and it was like amazing food. And so that was just something that was like, okay, like you need to pay it forward, I guess, in terms of like being kind to other people and being generous, even if there's no benefit, I guess, for you. Just, that's something that's always stuck with me. Even after all this time, it's been almost like 10 years. Oh my God. It's been almost like 10 years since I've been in college, but that was something that I remember.
I love that. That's awesome. That's so sweet.
Yeah, I love that. That's so nice. Like, I know building relationships and making sure that you have those connections is so important. And you mentioned paying it forward. Do you think that mentality has like stuck with you? Because now you're a prosecutor and you work with like individuals that might not have as much, or individuals that like just really need your help, So do you think that mentality has like impacted the way you view your career, or?
Absolutely. I think, especially in my position now, I think being in a position of power, which I don't like saying that, but it is what it is. I do have a lot of power over what I'm doing and ultimately over people's lives. I think being able to look at somebody who has done something wrong and say, you know what, like you've committed a crime, obviously, and you have to, do your time or pay for it somehow. But being able to have that compassion for people and say, you know what, maybe you were under the influence at the time, or maybe you need some extra mental health, assistance, or you need something other than being put behind bars to help you so that you don't reoffend, so that you don't have to come back in front of me in, a month or 6 months or a year because, we just threw you away and you were just another person behind bars. You're just another criminal. I think that has really been important to me. And I feel, I did feel like I've had that kind of quality in my life of just being like trying to be kind to other people. But I've been very fortunate in that where I work now, I have an office full of people who are like that. And my boss is like that of like, let's focus on serving the community more than let's get high numbers for a conviction rate. It's never been about like a competitive nature or like for the win. It's always been, this is my community. I live in this county. I live among people here who may have done something wrong. And I don't want to be, the punisher, and I don't want to ruin someone's life within reason, of saying, you're going to jail for 20 years because you did whatever, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like just having compassion for people has been, pretty crucial in my personal life and also in my career.
That's awesome. It's rewarding also. I mean, that's nice to hear that you care about what happens next with people. You don't just look at your conviction rates.
Right.
Yeah. So what was your motivation for applying to law school, and how has your career focus evolved?
Oh, God. I'm like, how much time do we have? No.
Plenty of time.
So my initial motivation to go to law school was to be an immigration attorney, just because, like I mentioned before, my mom's side of my family, immigrated here from Mexico. And I thought that I was going to go and, I'm going to change the world for all of these people and do all of this. And then I actually got into law school, and you start to learn that your ideal situation may not always necessarily be reality. And so, there's certain laws, certain things that just don't always work out in the way that you want them to. And for me specifically, when I was in an immigration class that I took, we were reading some case or some publication that was just talking about, we can get, a visa for mom, but her 2 young children will have to go back to their home country. Or we can get a visa for, 1 child, but mom and the other child, or dad and the other child, will have to go back to their home country, and just like basically like splitting up families, because that's just pretty much all you could do with the law at the time, or the situation that we were working with at the time. And so for me, I had to think, is this something that I could do long term? Is this something that I'd feel comfortable telling a mother, like, you can stay here, but you've got to send your kids back to wherever country that you came from, or, you can leave one of your children here, but you have to go back to where you came from. And so it just was something that, for me personally, I couldn't feel comfortable, telling a family that, hey, you're going to have to split up in order to comply with the law or whatever, and B, feel comfortable taking money from these people to tell them something like that. And that's not to say that immigration attorneys are bad or whatever, just it's the reality, I guess, of immigration, is that doesn't always work out the way that you want it to. And so for me, I didn't feel comfortable personally doing that. Now, I know a lot of immigration attorneys who are great, who are very successful and helping people, and who really are passionate about, the work that they're doing. And I commend them and I applaud them. But I just knew for me personally that was probably not something that was going to be sustainable in the long run. And so I was like, well, let me switch gears. Let me find another area of law that is interesting to me. And so I ended up switching weirdly to tax law, which anybody who knows me knows that I am not a numbers person. Like, math and I just do not go well together. Like, I went to law school for a reason, but I ended up really liking it. I had some great professors, and I think tax is a lot more interesting than people might give it credit for. There's a lot of creative things you can do in tax. But I really enjoyed it for a while. I worked for a low-income tax clinic in my law school. But that, also presents its set of, is this something that I couldn't do for the long run? Because for me, I speak Spanish. And so our tax clinic director was like, well, let's bring in, Hispanic clients, because we can actually serve them now. And just seeing, people, and especially like immigrants. I had a couple of immigrant clients who would come in and basically they'd been, working in like construction, and these companies that were like, they would just pop up and, you can create an LLC like that. And then they would put all of the LLC, the company's income, into this person's name and their social security number, knowing like, this person is undocumented, and, what are they going to do? I'm going to take all of this money and they'll be left holding the bag. And so we had a couple of people in that situation. By the time they come to us, this company is no longer in business. So there's no real recourse for a client other than to work with the IRS, or to work with like, the state revenue or whatever department you're dealing with to help these people. And so, again, I'm like, how can I help? Like, what can I do? And it was good to do that in a educational setting and in school. But on the other side, I had to think about, I'm getting ready to graduate, and I need to figure out a way that I can help people, but also that I can earn an income, because, we all have to pay our bills. We all have to work and get an income. And so it was just, that wasn't, from what I saw, really a huge area of opportunity for me. And I know that probably sounds really bad saying it out loud, but, I think we all have to look and balance of how can I help other people, but I also can't, sacrifice my own well-being and my own good in the process,
Yeah.
And so that ended up, being just kind of a phase, I guess, of an area of interest. And I'm sure maybe in the future, I'll probably end up doing it like pro bono type of things when I'm financially able to do that. because I think it is a huge problem and something that, people, especially non-English speaking people, have to deal with, paying their taxes and the IRS and any kind of tax issues. But that was just something that I had to just kind of let go of in the moment. But I definitely learned a lot, and it definitely kind of helped me build that compassion for people in a legal setting, I guess, and just, trying to serve people. But so cut this long story short, I'm sorry. Just so after that, I graduated and ended up working in a totally opposite direction in IT and being a project manager, which was also really cool. Just kind of learn a lot of cool skills and a lot more detail oriented, I guess, or being very detail oriented in what I was doing, which has been very helpful in, my legal career. Just being more detail oriented, being able to talk to people who are, I guess, like above me or have more power over me, like, whatever. Just feeling more comfortable doing that too. But then after I took the bar and passed the bar, I had an opportunity to work for a judge, to clerk for a judge. And that was just such an amazing experience for me because, the judge that I worked for, she was also a Hispanic woman, and she'd been a judge for, I think, almost 30 years, I want to say. It's been a long time. Mm-hmm. And so just being able to learn from her and to, have her push me and challenge me and not just be like, it's okay, like, you don't know something, I'll tell you. Like, just telling me, like, you're a lawyer. You're not here to just follow what I tell you to do. You're here to be an attorney. You're like a lawyer now. Mm-hmm. And just kind of having her push that into my mind and force me to look at myself and say, you know what, maybe I'm not pushing myself to the best of my ability. Maybe I'm not working as hard as I should be. That was just, I think, an invaluable experience for me. And so I'm forever grateful to her, and every opportunity I get to talk to her, I'm like, thank you so much for teaching me and pushing me and making me better, because I think without that experience, I probably wouldn't, not to say that I'm like an excellent attorney, I'm still very new and learning, but I don't think I'd be, the kind of person that I am now, like my work ethic and how diligent I am and how hard that I work, I think that she really, really helped shape that, a lot of that for me. And so after working for her, I got a job in a different sector, just working for a different area. And it wasn't a good match for me. It wasn't a good fit. It was far away from my family. It was like 3 hours away from where I lived. And so it wasn't a good fit for me. And so I ended up leaving that job after, I think it was about 3 months. And for anybody who's listening, I don't really recommend being like a job hopper. Like, don't just say, oh, this is not this is not fun to do all the time, so I'm leaving. It's just, you have to know yourself and know what is important to you. And I think that experience, was really something that I needed to go through and say, you know what, my happiness matters, and I spend most of my time at work, and I'm not going to suffer, I guess, through this job. Maybe not suffer, that's kind of a strong word, but I'm not gonna keep myself in a situation that I am not truly happy in for the sake of, I don't want to have like this blip on my resume. You know what I'm saying? That makes sense. So I luckily I got a phone call from a family friend who was like, hey, you have your license, right? Your law license? And I said, yeah. He's like, well, I know, district attorney, and he's looking to hire more people into his office. Or are you interested? Now, for people who know me, like criminal law was not even on my radar. I was like, I'm not doing that. No, thank you. Like, I just didn't see really like my place in that area of law. I just was like, that's not for me. Like I'm a bleeding heart. I care too much. I'm going to cry. I'm going to be sad. And so I was like, I can't do it. Keep me out of it. But you know, I told my friend, I was like, okay, you know, here's my resume, forward it on to him. I'm not happy where I'm at now, so this couldn't be worse, you know. So terrible logic, don't do that if you're job hunting. But, you know, for me, that's just where I was at the time. And so I applied and I came in for an interview, and I had an opportunity to actually sit down and talk with, you know, my boss now and our deputy, and just kind of hash out my feelings of like, well, you know, like, I don't see myself doing this job, you know, for the win. I'm not a big, like, let's just do it to win. Let's do it to get our numbers high. That's never, if I were to ever be in criminal law, that would not be something that I would want to be a part of. And he, you know, he explained to me like his position and his thoughts, and they aligned, and I was like, okay, maybe there is a place for me here. And so, you know, I went for an interview on Monday, and then they called me on Tuesday morning. It was like, we'd like to offer you the job. And so I was like, perfect. Like I'm in an office with people who are like-minded and who believe the same things that I do, you know, just in a personal sense and like a faith-based sense. And so that was really exciting for me. And I got to be close to my family again, which was also very, like, I'm very, very close to my family. You know, growing up with just my mom and my sister, we're like the three amigos. So like we're together all the time. And so that was just a huge, huge blessing for me that, you know, again, like I said, everything ends up working out the way that it should. You know, I've been pretty lucky that the jobs that I have ended up in have been places with people who are encouraging and who are supportive, but who also like push me to do well and to be the best that I can be in what I'm doing. And so this is just another place that I feel very comfortable, and I feel like I don't have to, you know, fake it to be part of the office, and which I think is huge. I think anybody who's like looking for work right now, like getting a feel for like the vibe in the office and getting to really know people. It's a huge, huge thing when you're working. I'm sure you guys can attest that you probably had to work at jobs where you're like, God, I can't wait to go home. Like these people get on my nerves.
Yeah, sometimes.
So, yeah. So I've just felt very, very blessed and fortunate. And so that's probably also why I feel okay with things not working out how I want them to, because I ultimately end up at a place that is like better than I could have imagined for myself.
That's awesome to hear too, like the different fields you've been in your career and what you've learned from each one.
Yeah.
So how have your social identities played a role in how you view yourself and the world around you?
You know, again, like I grew up in a community that was not super diverse. And so I've had to, I don't want to say learn my cultures, but I guess kind of understand them at a deeper level and understand, you know, an experience as a Hispanic person or experience as a Black person. Those were things that never really kind of crossed my mind when I was younger. You know, you experience, I guess people can and I've experienced instances of like racism, and that was probably the only times that I've ever been, I guess, conscious or aware. I'm like, oh wait, I'm different from my classmates, you know, like I have a different identity than my classmates, you know. But other than that, I never really had to think, you know, oh, I'm Hispanic and I'm Black and my experience in the world is going to be different from my counterparts who are not. But that's something that I really started to notice a lot moving back to where I live now, just because it is so much more diverse here. And I've had an opportunity to, Well, actually, no, at Central too, I had that experience in the dorms because my dorm was super diverse. And I know this is going to sound probably bad and you can edit it out if you want to, but I'm like, I've never seen so many Black people in my life. I've never seen so many Mexican people in my life in one place. And so, you know, just talking to people, I'm like, oh, like your mom came here from Mexico too. Like, oh, your dad does this. Oh, you know, just like things that maybe I didn't necessarily fully relate to with my counterparts growing up in, you know, middle of high school. But it was a cool experience. And then, you know, moving to Kansas City, obviously it is very, very diverse here. I wish I'd looked up the numbers before this conversation, but it's so much more diverse. You know, just you go down the street and you'll see, oh, there's Black people. Oh, there's Hispanic people. There's, you know, Asian people. And, you know, for me, where I grew up, that there wasn't a huge mix like that as it is here. But I think seeing that and recognizing, you know, there is a difference in being more aware of like, I guess you'd call it like social justice issues or things that you see in the media. It definitely has become something that I'm more aware of. And I think something that I'm cognizant of when I'm working in my job, you know, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but, you know, it is something that is touched on in the criminal justice arena. And so just being able to understand where people are coming from, or being able to understand that, you know, not everybody has the same experience or the same opportunities because of something, you know, as silly to me as race. You know, people have different experiences because of that. It's just, you know, it's been sad sometimes, but it's also been very eye-opening and helpful, I think, in how I approach the world, and how I approach my work. But just being able to, I guess, sympathize more in certain situations, that's kind of helped, I guess, how I navigate the world.
So how did it contribute to your level of resilience, would you say?
How has my like cultural identity?
Yeah.
I guess you kind of have to get to a more like micro level, I guess. And for me, it was seeing like my mom, who, you know, is Mexican immigrant, and seeing her just, you know, I think a lot of people can relate to that, of seeing their immigrant parents come to this country and just work insanely hard to just get to like, I don't know the correct word, but like a very like average life or very normal life, or being able to just give their kids like consistent shelter and food and like the necessities that they need, but just like seeing how much work goes into that. I think that has really helped me, I guess, be more appreciative of where I am in life. And again, knowing that whatever tough situation that I'm going through, somebody has it worse than me. My mom had it way harder than me. And so, you know, being able to be aware of that has helped me say, you know what, this sucks, but I'm going to get through it. My mom went through way worse, so I can keep pushing forward. You know what I'm saying? So I think just kind of that experience has helped me be more resilient. It's just being cognizant of the fact that, you know, people and more personally, my mom have gone through really difficult times, like way more difficult than I probably could ever get through on my own. And see how far they've come and how hard they work. That's really contributed to my ability to be resilient, I guess.
That's awesome. I love that you always like back to like your mom and like your upbringing, and I just think it's so like powerful. On that note, like what's one reminder, because I feel like I want to assume the answer to this, but like what keeps you like moving forward and like remaining grounded, like where you are in like your career and like where you're headed in the future?
I mean, obviously, like my mom, I'm like, she's like my hero. But I guess what keeps me grounded is knowing where I came from and knowing that I can always be, I don't know, maybe like always be doing better, always like achieving more. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but just for me, I just look at my mom, like you came here with nothing. You had 4 other brothers and sisters, and she had a single mom herself. So, just seeing you went from living in a house with like dirt, like a dirt floor house, to now you're, a senior partner at a financial company, just who does that? Like it just blows my mind. And so seeing that has really kept me like humble of like, you're not better than anybody else just because you have XYZ degree or, you do this for work. Like you're not better than anybody. And so I think another thing too is just a lot of influences in my life. My mom, my madrina, my godmother, have always just kind of kept that focus of like, you're here on earth. I guess this is more like a faith-based teaching. I guess you're here on earth to like serve people. You're not here to be this untouchable person. You're not here to if you're more successful, you're not here to like rub it in people's face. You're here if you've been given, opportunities, or you've been blessed with, financial wealth or whatever it is that you can then use to help somebody else, then that's what you should do. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So I think that has really been what has kept me, focused or grounded and not having a big head. But I also, on the flip side, I guess I see people who are more successful in their careers or who have more money than me, I guess. And so it always is just like, okay, like I can keep working and I'm going to keep grinding. And then I hope that I have that level of success so that I can then turn around to like help people.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how my brain works.
So Bianca, as we wrap up today, do you have any advice for future or current CW students?
Yes. I have lots of advice. I think I'm like trying to think of all the things that I've talked about. For one thing, I think probably the most important thing is to take some time and really get to know yourself and get to know what is important to you as a person, get to know what goals you have and why do you have those goals. I think those particular things have helped me personally, being able to walk away from situations that maybe are not necessarily in my best interest, jobs that are not fulfilling, or, relationships that are not healthy, or whatever the case may be. But just having a good sense of who you are, because if you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going, or you don't know why you're going in that direction, I think life is going to be very difficult for you, because you're driving blind, you have no destination on your map. And I think having a good focus and a good understanding of who you are is going to help you navigate through, whatever situation that you might be in. I think also a piece of advice that I have, I guess for anybody, but especially current students, is get out there and talk to people. Get out there and make connections with people, because, at the end of the day, like, look at us, we're in quarantine right now. And, I have been surviving because I have such amazing friends that I can text and call and FaceTime. And that's helpful, because at the end of the day, that's all we have. You can have a ton of money, but you're alone. Like, what good does that do? I think building relationships is hugely important. Not only for like your mental health, I guess, but also, if you have an interest in a particular profession, like get to know people in that profession, or reach out and see if you can shadow someone, or if you can have a conversation with somebody, because you never know, years down the line, you're looking for a job, or you're looking to transition in your profession, and you're like, hey, I know John Smith who does this. I met him when I was in college. Let me call him up and see if he knows somebody, or if he has a position open in his company, or those kinds of things. I think that's hugely important. And finally, God, I'm like, I have so many things that I wish I had known when I was in school, but I think the one thing that I did know in school, and that was important to me, and if it is possible for people, is to stay close with your family if you can, if it's possible and healthy. Just as important as friendships are, your relationships with your family, like not just your mom and dad, but like your siblings and your cousins, like extended family, I think is huge. For me, family is everything. When you're going through tough times, when you're struggling, when you're sad, life is hard, and having people in your family who love you to be there and to be supportive of you is really important. And so, call your grandparents, call your mom if you haven't seen her in a long time, just stay in touch, and remind them how important they are to you and how much you love them.
I want to thank Bianca for sharing your story and joining us for our last episode of our first season of Word to the Wildcats.
Awesome. So if you're interested in our other podcasts, make sure to check us out on our social medias, our CLCE website, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and more.
Thank you to all the listeners, and stay tuned for season 2. Bye, everybody.